Biharī. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Shubhada Paramahamsa Parivacharya Ashtodhara Shri Srimad Divine Graces Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Shubhada Paramahamsa Parivacharya Ashtodhara Shri Srimad Divine Graces Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All Gurus to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, entitled The Character of Bharat Maharaj. This is the last verse of this chapter, verse number 31. Read the verse. Tasmin api kalam prati Tasmin ati kalam pratikshmanah sanga chabhrasham udvigna atma sahachara sushka parna trina virudha vartamano mrigatva nimittavasanam eva ganayan mriga shariram tirthodaka klinnam utsaraja. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Remaining in that ashram, the great king Bharat Maharaj was now careful not to fall victim to bad association. Without disclosing his past to anyone, he remained in that ashram and ate dry leaves only. He was not exactly alone, for he had the association of the super soul. In this way, he waited for death in the body of a deer. Bathing in that holy place, he finally gave up that body. Purport. Holy places like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Prayag, and Jagannath Puri are especially meant for the execution of devotional service. Vrindavan especially is the most exalted and preferred holy place for Vaishnava devotees of Lord Krishna who are aspiring to return back to Godhead, the Vaikuntha planets. There are many devotees in Vrindavan who regularly bathe in the Yamuna, and this cleanses all the contamination of the material world. By constantly chanting and hearing the holy names and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, one certainly becomes purified and becomes a fit candidate for liberation. However, if one purposefully falls victim to sense gratification, he has to be punished, at least for one lifetime, like Bharat Maharaj. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled A Description of the Character of Bharat Maharaj. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Shwapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Niti Namine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauravrishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Seeking the blessings of all Vaishnavas to be able to speak something worthwhile on this glorious subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the last verse of this chapter of Bharat Maharaj. And as we know that Bharat Maharaj is having 3 lives. The next life is the deer, body of the deer. In this particular chapter, we are seeing that in this particular verse, he is just leaving the body of the deer, and now he is going to enter into the body of Jada Bharat. So next verse, next chapter onwards, will be the description of Jada Bharat. So since we have been hearing so long about Bharat Maharaj, we'll try to learn some certain lessons from this amazing pastime, and obviously we will also try to delve some time into the purport. Prabhupada's purports in this particular chapter are very, very instructive for the sadhakas. Particularly this pastime, as we see, is a very wholesome pastime, which is basically gives warnings as well as hope. It's filled with warnings for a sadhaka, and simultaneously it's filled with hope. If we have only warnings, then a person may get very discouraged also, or sometimes at times may be irritated also. Just like sometimes parents may tell children, don't go outside, don't eat this, close the door properly, or switch off the lights. So sometimes the children may get very irritated. I know it. I am old now. I am grown up now. But the same instruction again and again and again and again. But these instructions are very, it's basically cautioning a sadhaka. So sometimes when we feel we are grown up, and when we hear such instructions of warnings, we might feel irritated. So this is a very wonderful combination of warnings as well as hope. A warning is given so that one does not delve into the wrong area. Just like Prabhupada gives an example about his own son. He wanted to put his finger into the moving fan, table fan. And as a father, naturally, nobody would like to allow that. But then if the child is very adamant about it, then okay, you allow it. But when the fan is about to stop, you switch off the fan, and when the fan is about to stop, then you give an experience. Okay, put your finger and experience how does it feel, or like touching the fire, just touch it and take it back. So there are some warnings. At the same time, there is hope. Even if somebody gets into the wrong zone, even if somebody commits a mistake, still the hope of bhakti, hope of performing bhakti, like how Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar of Instruction. The pure devotional service is so contagious, and it drags one to the ultimate success. It drags one to the ultimate success. That means even if one has taken to the process, after some time we feel we are tired, and we may feel that, I don't know whether I made a right decision or not. But pure devotional service is so strong that eventually it drags a person to the ultimate success. Of course, dragging may be painful. If we voluntarily go, it will be very easier to, because it's a voluntary choice. So this is a very beautiful section. As I said, it's a combination of warnings and hope. So we see Swayambhu Manu, his son as Priyavrat. This is what we started with as the fifth canto. And then his son Agnidra, his son Nabhi, and then Rishabdev, Maharaj Rishabdev, who is the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And Rishabdev having 100 sons, eldest of whom is Bharat Maharaj. So zooming into the pastime of Bharat Maharaj, it is so. One interesting thing about this pastime is that it's like, he crossed big hurdles, but at the same time, he fell into small, petty, willful mistakes. It's like, for example, if like a firefighter, if he enters into a building it has caught fire, and he saves hundreds of people, so the next day he's going to receive some medal. And in the morning, while he is coming, before he is coming for the receiving the medal, while he is going to attend to his morning duties, he slips in the bathroom and dies. You know? So he has saved hundreds of people yesterday, a very courageous effort, but just before receiving his award, he slips in the bathroom and dies. It may feel very petty or very ironical. If somebody may have burnt in the fire while saving somebody may feel, okay, at least it was a great courageous act. But he saved in all that. He saved people, but at the end of it, he simply slipped. So here, Bharat Maharaj is attained bhava stage. Just one penultimate, just one before the stage of prema. And even at that stage, he's slipping or he's just sort of falling down. Of course, Prabhupada gives us warning, gives us in his beautiful purports in the chapter, mentions that Bharat Maharaj, this is for our instruction, Bharat Maharaj acted in such a way. We should never feel that Bharat Maharaj has fallen from that position. Like Prabhupada many times mentions about Arjuna also. Krishna wanted to instruct the whole world about the message of Bhagavad Gita, and he made Arjuna as an instrument. In a similar way, Krishna wants to teach this very valuable lesson that even if one comes to the stage of bhava, one cannot take the process of devotional service for granted. One cannot take it casually. That's why it is Shurasya Dhara. At every point of time, one has to be cautious. As the examples are given, it is like swimming upstream. When we are trying to swim upstream, when we take a break, then we don't remain where we are, rather come down. So when we keep putting efforts, at least we may remain where we are, if not proceed further. But when we don't put continuous efforts, when the efforts are not continuous, it is by nature, gravitational force pulls one down. So that's why it's very interesting. Like similarly, we find Shaubari Muni, performing penance in the waters, underwater. That means he must have got rid of so much of distractions in the outside world, and he wanted to focus so much that he actually comes underwater to perform penance. But eventually gets carried away by seeing 2 fishes. So it looks like you've crossed big hurdles, but apparently it's like, you're crossing an ocean, but falling into a puddle of water. It seems so ridiculous like that. So we'll try to see certain, as I said, warnings and hopes from this particular beautiful pastime, which is a very balanced pastime. And next theme we will try to see, because this particular section of Bharat Maharaj highlights a lot on association. So we will try to see that although we are living in association, we should not get into the same zone as Bharat Maharaj. We might feel that how this pastime is relevant to us, because Bharat Maharaj entered into the forest, he had no association. Whereas we are living in a community of devotees. We are living in ashram. So how is it applicable for us? So we'll try to see from that particular perspective about association. And towards the end, we'll also try to cover this purport where Prabhupada mentions about the preferred place of departure. If one wants to depart his body, then what are the preferred holy places? Prabhupada mentions about that. We'll try to discuss on that also. So very many years back, His Holiness Jayadat Swami Maharaj had made a seminar, Hopes and Horrors of Household Life. It was a little bit controversial, but I not get into the controversy part. But similarly, I wanted to mention about warnings and hopes for a sadhaka from this pastime of Bharat Maharaj. So as we just discussed, that he attained the stage of bhava, but yet he has fell from that. Or as Prabhupada mentions, for our instruction, Bharat Maharaj acted in this particular way. Like in our childhood, we must have played this snake and ladder game, from 1 to 100. So there are ladders at different positions, and there are snakes at strategic locations. And sometimes we may get bitten at 10, we may get bitten at 25, we may get bitten, and the most succumbing, is like 99. There will be a big snake. We may cross 10, 20, 40 and all that, but there will be a big snake waiting at 99. And as Prabhupada mentions in various purports, last snare of Maya. It's like that. So he has crossed so many hurdles. From Shraddha to Bhav is a very, very long journey. For most of us, Anartha Nivritri is a lifetime process. So what Bharat Maharaj has crossed is from Shraddha to Bhav. And even at that stage, this pastime is instructive to say that we cannot take our devotional service for granted. The practice of devotional service. Now that we have come, now it is in auto mode. As sometimes people have this automatic machine, the vehicles also, auto mode. That means you don't need to drive anymore. You just relax behind the wheels. It is never like that. That's how instructive this particular pastime is. Second warning we can understand from this is that he was distracted by compassion. Like for people who are practicing devotional service for very long years, many years, hardly anybody would succumb for if somebody gives a non-vegetarian foodstuffs. Hardly anybody would succumb to that. So the Maya Devi illusory energy knows what we may succumb and what we are strong at. If somebody is given non-vegetarian foodstuffs, we can immediately say no to it. We may feel obnoxious. What to speak of non-vegetarian, even if the smell of onion or all that stuffs, one may feel very repulsive. So these kind of things, the illusory energy is already aware of, that they will not fall for it. What are the weak points? That is what the illusory energy wants to touch. A saintly person is naturally compassionate. So using that parameter or using that perspective, the illusory energy is putting a trap here, the trap of compassion. So he was basically distracted by compassion itself. What appeared as compassion, but that was eventually sort of bodily compassion, and he gets trapped into that. That's why we see Prabhupada mentions that my fear is that my devotees are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. Are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. Because as years progress, we also know Maya. No? The way she comes, the way she attacks, when she will attack. We are also getting little conversant with the illusory energy. We may feel familiar with the illusory energy. And that is how she makes herself also, and obviously comes in disguise, and that's where it's like saying pulling the rug out of the feet. We are standing very peacefully, and if the rug below the feet is just pulled, then the person simply falls. So the distraction is by compassion. It was not expected. If probably wealth was offered, he would not have succumbed to it. He already gave up. He gave up a kingdom. He gave up an entire royal kingdom with all the paraphernalia and everything, and family members, but fell for compassion for a deer. And then we see how Bharat Maharaj could not be saved, as one of the main themes of this particular pastime is that because he had no association. This is a very important theme for this particular pastime. As Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj would mention in his famous quotations, at the end of the day, all we have is each other. At the end of the day, all we have is each other. And again, we see from the perspective of, even from the definition of Kanishtha, Madhyama, Uttama, Kanishtha is very attracted to deities. Kanishtha is not an atheist. Kanishtha is very attracted to the deities, but he has nothing to do with devotees. On the stage of Madhyama platform, he understands, if I have to approach the deities, I need the support of devotees. Devotees are the ones who can actually help me to sustain the process and to flourish in this process of devotional service. So this is a very important theme in this particular pastime, that Bharat Maharaj could not be saved because he had no association. So what is the warning? That we should always be surrounded with devotees. We should be in the association of Vaishnavas. Another warning we can see is the attachment that he had made him so blind that he eventually neglected devotional service. In this case, it was attachment to a deer. In our case, it can be, as we know that each one of us has our own deers, our own things that we may be attached to. So in this case, attachment was so blinding that eventually he neglected devotional service. And that's why we had to be very conscious and cautious while we are practicing devotional service, that devotional service is the main pivot, is the center. Jai Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Bhagavan ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Maiya ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nithai ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Devotional service is the main pivot, catching which we may try to extend a little bit more. But if we leave the anchor, as they say, we leave the anchor of devotional service and then we try to explore outside, it can be very, very dangerous. Sometimes people explore from the job perspective, going abroad. Sometimes people want to earn more wealth quickly. And so many reasons, so many parameters may be there. But we have to understand, we cannot neglect devotional service at any cost. As Shankar many times gives the example, it's like buying a painting at the cost of giving one's eyes. What is the use? You're buying a painting, but the cost is give your eyes. What is the use? So it's like, it is so very essential that one does not get distracted from or neglecting the principles of devotional service. In the name of, even if it is in the name of some parameters of devotional service. If you want to compare, like Bharat Maharaj got attracted to a deer and eventually he sort of fell, whereas we see in the case of Shivananda Sen, he also was attracted to a dog. The dog was coming along with him in the yatra. He was almost like a yatri, along with the other devotees. He felt so much compassionate on the dog. Eventually, when the dog was missing, he was like frantically searching. So apparently it seems he was also attached. But we don't see that he left his devotional service because of attachment to the dog. Eventually that dog attained further destinations, further higher destinations, meeting even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? So in this case, Bharat Maharaj got so attached, his attachment was so he was so blinded by the attachment that he eventually neglected his devotional service. That's why it is very important for us to remind ourselves that we have to mold our lives in such a way that Krishna is always in the center of our lives. We have to mold our lives in such a way that Krishna is always remains in the center of our lives. And then we can see certain hopes. We have seen so many warnings in this, as if we are not surrounded by association, it is dangerous. If we may be distracted even by compassion. So we'll see some hopes of this particular pastime, that apparently although Bharat Maharaj slipped or he fell even from the stage of bhava, but still he got another body and his consciousness was preserved. That is something very extraordinary. And of course, as Krishna explains, Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram, or yam yam bhavi smaran bhavam. At that time of death, if one whatever one remembers, that is the body one gets. So Bharat Maharaj was attracted to the deer, he got the body of the deer. But the hope is, his consciousness was preserved. He was able to remember that he performed devotional service in the body of Bharat Maharaj and all that he remembered, and he was extremely cautious not to fall victim this time. So this is very hope-giving that, as we understand, neha vikramana shasti pratyavayana vidyate salpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little bit of devotional service performed saves one from the greatest danger. And what to speak of more devotional service performed, intense devotional service performed, how much more Krishna will be making arrangements. Another very important hope we can understand from this is, although Bharat Maharaj was punished, it was only for a short period. He got the body of a deer, one life, second life, body of Jada Bharat, and is going back. It was a very short period. We might feel, life is quite big, but in the sojourn of the journey of the soul, one life, two life is hardly much from the perspective of how long one has been in this mire of material world, in the ocean of the material nature. So Prabhupada writes, he was punished for a short period, and in that short period of punishment, he actually underwent repentance, and which is what actually displays his sincerity and determination. That repentance actually displays one's sincerity and determination, and as a result of which, eventually he gets the body of Jada Bharat. Another hope Prabhupada mentions is that even in the body of the deer, he was so eagerly waiting to perform devotional service that eventually he gets the body of Jada Bharat. That means Prabhupada mentions that devotional service became intensified. Although he fell, still devotional service became intensified. That means externally, bodily, he underwent whatever sufferings were there, or like we see in the pastime of Vritrasur. The body changed externally, the body of an asura, but the consciousness was preserved, or even rather than saying preserved, it was actually accelerated. Devotional service was intensified even in different bodies. So that's a very great hope of this particular pastime. So this is what is the warnings and hope of this particular pastime of Bharat Maharaj. So if you want to just relish some of the purports in this particular chapter, Prabhupada mentions Bharat Maharaj got attracted to a deer when he was in the stage of bhava, and apparently he fell. What to speak of those who are attached to dogs and cats while they are not even practicing devotional service? You know? What will be their condition? You know? They will just get similar bodies. You know? Prabhupada mentions like that. Then just some purports before Prabhupada is just mentioning about how Bharat Maharaj, in the body of a deer, he leaves his mother. It's a very ironical again to notice this. When he saw the mother deer is giving up her life out of fear, he took care of the baby deer. Now, when he himself gets the body of a deer, he leaves his mother deer and comes in this village in this holy place of Shalagram, and again he is just nearby the holy places, near the saintly personalities. You know. And just the previous purport, yesterday His Holiness Bhakti Prabodhanand Saraswati Maharaj mentioned very wonderfully how ISKCON is not a free hotel. The society is not a free hotel. Very beautiful purport Prabhupada mentions. And just one before also, Avyartha Kalatvam. Both Maharaj explained very nicely in this particular sessions on this, his series of lectures on Bharat Maharaj. So ISKCON is not like a free hotel, just one purport before Prabhupada mentions. So what free hotel means what? It's like that means only enjoyment without any payment, without any responsibilities. So basically our payment is the responsibility and the services that we can offer. Isn't it? Enjoyment is the facilities that one receives, the facility to practice devotional service. But if that is taken for granted, if the payment is not made for that, then what will happen? Then we are just enjoying it without making payment. What will happen? With interest one has to pay later. Isn't it? The responsibility and the service is actually our payment by which we can repay. Prabhupada many times when he was asked, how can we repay what we have received? Prabhupada said, just share it. First, of course, more than sharing it, first of all, receive it properly. Receive it properly and share it with others. So while we are sharing it, while we are receiving it, and while we are sharing it with others, naturally we take on responsibility in devotional service and render services which actually intensifies one's devotional service. It's like when a person had gone to, there was a board outside the hotel that you don't have to pay anything for whatever you eat now. Your grandson will pay. You don't have to pay anything now. Person feels, wow, this is how people get attracted. Say, wow, I don't have to pay anything. Go and eat as much as you can. After that, a bill comes. And the person says, but outside the board was there, you can eat as much as you want, your grandson will pay. He says, yes, this bill is of your grandfather. This bill is of your grandfather. It's not yours. And then he says, why so much? 100 years before with interest. The bill is also intensified. So like that, it's never a free hotel. We may feel. So we have to really understand, I mean, that's how Prabhupada explains that for devotees it is muktir hitva anyatah swarupena vivasthiti. That liberation is actually a state where, I mean, it's our constitutional position to be rendering services. So when we render service and when we take responsibility, that is like our payment. That is why our service should be more than what we receive as facility. Lest in case we have to come back again to render more services and more responsibilities. Of course, a devotee is always happy to, I mean, there are a category of devotees who might feel happy to come again, and there are those who may want to just go back in this very lifetime. Anyways, but in any case, it is better that we offer, we take less and offer more, rather than we take more and offer less. So one important theme as you wanted to discuss on this is about the pastime of about the parameter of association. We might feel that Bharat Maharaj had gone to the forest. He was without association. How does this pastime apply to us? We are surrounded by devotees, much more than probably what we may want or need. Either as a community of devotees or in the ashram. Too many devotees. So how does this apply to us? So if in case today somebody feels that, I also will want to go to the forest, we can hear the pastime of Bharat Maharaj and know that, it's not meant for us. Or somebody may feel, okay, if not go to the forest, let me just isolate myself and just chant 64 rounds, 128 rounds and all that, Let me just intensify my devotional service, either just read or just perform chanting and all that. Even that, we have many episodes, even during Prabhupada's time, where devotees have approached Prabhupada and said, I want to just chant 64 rounds, I want to just read, and so many aspects. And Prabhupada said, it is better for us to engage physically in devotional service. Work now and samadhi later. Many times he has mentioned this very emphatically. So we might feel, okay, we will not fall into this. We are anyway surrounded by so many devotees. So even while being surrounded by devotees, we might still fall in the same trap of Bharat Maharaj. How we can try to understand this? Like this beautiful verse, Jivan api mritopi saha. Neha yat karma dharmaya na viragaya kalpate na tirthapada sevayai jivan api mrito hi saha. It's like, if one's work does not transform into religious duties, dharma, or if one's religious ritualistic performances does not lead towards renunciation, na viragaya kalpate, or if one is situated in renunciation, but he does not render devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, na tirthapada sevayai, jivan api mrito hi saha. Although he is breathing, he is considered dead. So similarly, we can try to understand sango api asango hi saha. Although living in association, we might be as if we are not taking advantage of that association. So how is it that we may be surrounded by devotees and we may still not be taking benefit or advantage of the devotee association? That means we may be closing ourselves or closing certain doors or windows by which either others may not reach us, or when others speak to us, we are not giving a oral reception. So certain conditions which we can try to understand from this as like sangha api asango hi. So we are in association, but we are not benefiting by that. One condition is if we become unapproachable. We are living in an association, but if we become unapproachable means if we always get angry, if we always give suggestion, if we only speak, it's not that everybody likes to, in association means somebody wants to speak, somebody wants to hear also, it's a reciprocation. But if you only want to speak, if we get angry always, hyper always and all that, sometimes we may create a fence around ourselves by which we become unapproachable, or devotees perceive us as unapproachable. If we may become insensitive to the other devotees' needs. Sometimes, like for example, insensitive, of course, just to give an example, may not be right, but just to understand what it means, like Nimai Pandit, he would always argue with many devotees or the students. And at times when others would see him from a far distance, they would run away. That if he catches us, first of all, a lot of time will go. And on top of that, he will question us, cross-question us. If we answer it, again he will break that, and again he will try to again and again, prod over it. So like at times Nimai Pandit would say that, just see why this Murari Gupta is running away from there. Another devotee would explain, maybe he has some other work, he'll come back again afterwards. No. Nimai Pandit says, I know, that he doesn't want to associate with me. So like that, if we make a fence around ourselves of being unapproachable, that means if that is a perception that we create, then sometimes devotees may not be happy to approach. If we become insensitive, what is the meaning of insensitive? Insensitive to others' time taken. I'll give a simple example. Say a personality like Krishna Chandra Prabhu. Sometimes he calls me, and when he calls, he would say, Prabhu, can I speak to you now? Are you busy? A personality like Krishna Chandra Prabhu, even if I am in meeting, I might cancel that and attend to him. But how respectful and how courteous that he expresses. On the other hand, we might find some devotees, some younger devotees, just barging in. Prabhu, can I get 5 minutes? And we know that what does that 5 minute translate as, right? So, if somebody becomes, these are certain aspects by which one might create a fence around oneself, by which one becomes insensitive. Another aspect is we might be not so insensitive about this, but at the same time, if we are only surrounded by juniors, if we are only surrounded by yes sir men, this may apply of course more to leadership. If we are only surrounded by people who always nod with whatever we say, sway along with whatever we talk about, then it may not be very healthy, because one will not get good suggestions. Even Kamsa had counselors, isn't it? But what was the counsel that he received? That is, a demoniac counselors would give that kind of advice only if somebody is not very protective about it. And third aspect is one may not be cautious, or one may not pay heed to repeated warnings. It's like we are living in association. Somebody gives us some caution. Somebody gives us some warnings. But if somebody does not listen to it, it is as good as not staying in association. How better is that? If we are not heeding to the warnings or the cautioning, just like Ravana got so many warnings by his own wife, he got warnings by Marichi, so many sages, but eventually nothing fell on his deaf ears, as it said. Even Vali was warned by his wife Tara, but he did not pay heed to that warnings. This may still even feel gross. One of the most important categories which may apply more for us is if we don't take feedbacks very seriously. Because in association, we might receive feedbacks. And when we receive feedback, we feel the person who gives me feedback does not like me. We feel the person who gives me feedback has something negative against me. But when we receive feedback within the association, that is a great hope for us to actually get correction. Because otherwise, it is as good as staying in the forest where nobody is selling anything. When we receive feedback, that is a great hope, because it's like, if we have a black, what do you call that, stigma or something on the nose, we may not be able to see it, but people in the front are able to immediately notice it. And when somebody says that, we might feel offended because of our ego, but if you just look at the mirror, it will look so very simplified, Just remove that and continue the course. Nobody is telling to, not show your face again. People are only saying, just wipe it off. It's as simple as that. And from the perspective of feedback, the best people who can give feedback are those who are with us. Isn't it? Those who observe us closely. Not that we ask somebody who is 1,000 miles away, Prabhuji, can you please give me some feedback? No. How will it help? Somebody who observes us on a very close note, somebody who observes us regularly, has more understanding of what behavior traits we have, of what mistakes one might make, rather than asking somebody who is 1,000 miles away, and just to have some good image, we might ask for, please give me some feedback. So even while we are living in association, we may not benefit if either we are insensitive, we create a fence around ourselves, or we may we may make ourselves falling deaf ears, like whatever warnings or cautionings are there, we don't pay heed to it. Or if we don't take feedbacks while living in association very seriously, because that's a very great hope for us to get purified. When it's like when many stones are put in a bottle, it is very natural, and then when you shake it, it's very natural there will be some friction. So when so many devotees are staying, it is very natural there will be so many frictions. But in those friction, when we get some feedbacks, it will be so helpful to correct ourselves. That rough edges can get smoothened or polished. That will be very beneficial. And particularly in this purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions about how the holy places like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Prayag and Jagannath Puri are especially meant for the execution of devotional service. And in this regard, we can understand this is it's a preferred place of departure. A Vaishnava would naturally want to depart his body in a holy place. Now, what is traditionally considered as holy place, Prabhupada is mentioning as Vrindavan, Haridwar, Prayag, Jagannath Puri, and of course Mayapur and other places are there. For a sadhaka, that is naturally something one should aspire for, that when one leaves his body in a holy place. At the same time, Prabhupada gave us so many wonderful definitions of the holy place, and at the same time explained what is the spirit of being in the holy place. Prabhupada himself, although in one sense we can say physically he departed his body in Vrindavan, still he would many times make the statement that I would like to leave my body in the battlefield while I am preaching. So when he says while I am preaching, it doesn't mean that necessarily he may not be in Vrindavan physically. He may be in the airplane. He was even ready to go to London while he was not even ready to, not even able to get out of his bed in the dilapidated physical condition. But Prabhupada made that statement that I would like to leave my body. That means it's better to die in the battlefield rather than simply be in complacent zone. So Prabhupada, although one sense he mentions about the definition of the holy place, but also explains about what is the spirit of being in that holy place. What Bhagavad Gita explains is Antakale cha mameva, that one remembers the Lord at the time of death. At the same time, if one renders a lot of devotional service, then one really does not have to worry so much whether I might leave this moment or after 1 hour. Whether it is this moment or after 1 hour, in either case, if one is engaged in devotional service, he doesn't have to time it. He doesn't have to really time the process. So Prabhupada was so conscious and so mercifully, he gave us so many temples, ISKCON temples, which are basically a manifestation of places like Vrindavan. As Prabhupada many times would say that these temples are non-different than Vaikuntha. Like in Sri Sampradaya, there is this personality Mahapurna. Mahapurna and Kuresh, when they were tortured by this Kolatunga, and Kuresh's eyes were plucked out, and Mahapurna could not withstand a lot of torture being inflicted. Eventually, when they both were coming towards Srirangam, Kuresh was pleading to him, please hold on your body for some more time. We are just about to reach the Srirangam. We are just on the outskirts. Please hold on your body for some more time. And Mahapurna said, no need. No need that I depart my body physically in a place like Srirangam. Of course, it's a great glory, no doubt about it. Nobody is denying that. But they have performed so much devotional service that they don't mind leaving their body in any place because they are so confident. Just like Vritarasura's prayers, if you read, he says, please cut my neck, please kill me. Because as soon as you free me from this body, I am going back home, back to Godhead. He had so much confidence. And similarly, following in the footsteps, we find His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, leaving his body in Gita Nagari. He specifically had mentioned to his disciples, I don't want to physically travel to Vrindavan. I want to show to the whole world that Prabhupada has created so many Vrindavan, that Prabhupada has created so many holy places. All the ISKCON temples are basically holy places personified, Vaikuntha. And I want I want to make that point very emphatic. And naturally, as he was departing, there were so many Prabhupada disciples, so many devotees were very eager to take his association, to see his intensified devotional service. As Maharaj give a 5-hour lecture, on His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, a life of compassion, dedication, and loyalty. So these personalities have performed so much of devotional service that even if they physically don't depart in a so-called traditional holy place, but their faith is so strong that Prabhupada has created so many holy places all across. Why not take advantage of that? So this particular purport explains about how when one departs in the holy places, one goes back home, back to Godhead. So here in the body of the deer, Bharat Maharaj gave up his body, and the next verse, next chapter onwards, we are going to see the life of Jada Bharat. And in the life of Jada Bharat, he is extremely cautious. Just like Shukdev Goswami did not even want to come out of the womb of his mother. I don't want to give and take anything with the material world. 16 years. Like that, Jada Bharat is like absolutely not wanting to do anything with this material world. People may call me mad, people may call me whatever they want, but I am focused on performing devotional service. So that is what we will see next. So today we could see warnings and hope in the life of a sadhaka from the pastime of Bharat Maharaj. And then we saw some beautiful purports from Srila Prabhupada about how ISKCON is not a free hotel. And towards the end we saw about we might feel association, about the parameter of association, that how Bharat Maharaj's pastime is relevant to us because he was staying in a forest. So Jivan api mrito hi saha. Similarly, we try to see Sangha api asango hi saha. Although we may be living in association, we may not be taking advantage of that association. So we saw different parameters about if we become insensitive, or if we don't hear others' warnings, or if we don't take feedback seriously, we might be living in association but not taking advantage of the association that we have. And towards the end, we saw about how Prabhupada mentions the importance of leaving one's body in the holy places. And many great devotees, including Prabhupada disciples, have shown about how Prabhupada has created Vrindavan, holy places, in the form of ISKCON temples, which is a great fortune for each one of us to render some glorious service and perfect our lives. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any comments or any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we saw that Bharat Maharaj was such a great devotee, but then why he did not thought of having association while performing the devotional service?
Yeah, I think this question has been asked multiple times. Yesterday also something was discussed on this, that why Bharat Maharaj had to take one more lifetime as a deer and one more life of as Jada Bharat also. So if he was so great a devotee, just like we hear about, what comes to my mind is, for example, like Madhavendra Puri. So he was just roaming around. He was roaming around touring the holy places. Similarly, we find Nityanand Prabhu was roaming around touring the holy places. And at some point of time, Madhavendra Puri happens to meet Nityanand Prabhu. And they say that as if he has not met a devotee at all till now. And he was so ecstatic to see, I mean, they both were so jubilant to see each other. What it basically means is that they were devotees of such caliber that for them to even to sometimes associate with people who are younger might be a little bit of distraction. They themselves are on such a high level. For example, sometimes you may find spiritual masters would tell servants that, for next 2 hours, please, leave me. It can be sometimes like that. So, and they may want their times. But in this case, Bharat Maharaj himself was so extraordinarily advanced, as we heard even from Prabhupada Saraswati Maharaj yesterday also, about how even in the youthful stage, he had left his kingdom, left his family. It's not that he was frustrated with the family. We're all, in spite of getting support from the family, in spite of having so much of wealth and kingdom, he could give that up. So that is their glory, that they were able to practice. Like we hear about Narad Muni. Narad Muni is roaming around. If we say that, why Narad Muni is alone roaming around? Well, we can't apply that principle. It's like taking a candle and showing it to the sun. We can't apply the principles which apply for a sadhaka for extraordinarily great personalities. It doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to us, that we can also go to the forest and live alone. But if he was so exalted devotee, still the question is that, why he did not associate with others. That is sometimes can be mysterious for us, and to some extent, as I tried to explain, that they may not have people of that caliber also sometimes. Who you want to add?
Actually, Sridhara Swami, in his commentary, he says that a very advanced Vaishnava devotee can associate with himself, his own pure consciousness, especially in the event of not having good association. Thank you. It was a beautiful class it was. It was like flowing like Akash Ganga. You can go on hearing. Thank you. Shankar Pandit Prabhu ki
Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.